it's a great premise for a mockumentary. But what was it that kind of inspired you both, really?
And do you want to talk
All
about
right, I can
that?
talk.
He's got it down, yeah.
Well, yeah. We were particularly interested. We love the convention culture and the idea of kind of horror fandom, but we also got particularly interested. Our producer Neal Jones does a podcast, and he had a couple of guests on his podcast who were kind of had a rivalry because they played the same character in a slasher film. I won't tell you which film, but they were kind of like angry that the other one was on his podcast as well, and so on. And so we thought, oh, that's a really interesting kind of space and story to talk about. And so we wanted to look at, two people kind of had a rivalry because they played the same character. I thought that was fun. Yeah.
And setting it in a Comic-Con as well is the ideal location. It's a strange sort of place because it's all of a sudden out of San Diego, Comic-Cons have just sprung up all around the world. What made it the right environment to be able to tell the story? An ideal environment.
Yeah, well, just the reality of it. We set them up at a table to collect their autographs, and people are there to do that. And it's like it's its own breathing, living experience. And so, all the convention people that are in the movie are real people that were there. And so we're filming everybody. And yeah, I think it's just the fact that it exists. And these actors from our childhood are just there. And I think with social media and everything, those barriers that we once had to actors and everything are gone. So, then there they are in the flesh. And so, it's just like a whole industry around it that's so fascinating.
And what makes a documentary as well the right medium really for you guys to tell this story really?
I think, because so much of it is sort of set in reality, like we're saying, we have so little control over the actual space and the way that things kind of happen, that, trying to do a narrative film in that format, I think is not, I don't know, it'd be hard. It'd be hard. And I think the documentary, it also, because, we can't control sound as well, or lighting, or any of those kinds of things. So I think it watching it as a viewer, that it has the experience of a documentary.
I was going to say a fly on the wall, and almost you like that organic experience that you've literally just got to roll with it, which is thrilling for you.
Oh yeah, we loved it. We shot 3 cameras and we just tried to follow it as much as we could, and then later in the edit be like, okay, this is what we have. This is what we did. We tried to capture as best we could, and I think it works for the story. Yeah.
Do you think as well when you start making a documentary, you obviously have to have a structure of how you want it to go, but of course the beauty of it, because of the organicness of it, there's threads and different paths that documentary filmmaking takes you on, and I just wondered, was there something that you've learned that you didn't expect? Did it take you on a story that you didn't?
Yeah, I think the overall is pretty similar to what we expected, but there definitely are threads and things that happen on shooting that were happy surprises. And we were at the Mad Monster party in North Carolina shooting it, and we didn't really know even what events were happening there and so on. So we got involved in things like there was a costume contest there that we had no idea that was going to happen, and ended up being really
a big
interesting.
scene, yeah. And also just that both actors ended up coming out of it as friends when they went into it as enemies. So we kind of followed that whole journey. They ended up with a common enemy, and therefore they became friends. So it's like they had a whole arc there that we didn't necessarily expect to come through so much. Yeah.
So tell us about the film and kind of what inspired you to want to get behind it, really.
All right. So the film is the Once and Future Smash, and it's a documentary about 2 horror actors from 1970 who both take credit for playing the same slasher in the movie, and then they're booked together at a convention for the first time in 50 years. And the inspiration is I do a podcast, and I've had guests who have similar rivalries. And so I was talking to my friend Michael Epstein, who's over here, who's the director with Sophia Cacciola. And he's like, that would be a good idea for a movie. And I was like, yeah, it would be. And so I have a lot of connections to horror actors and icons, so I had a lot of friends get involved, and also connections to Mad Monster film convention, which Eben, who runs that, is a good friend of mine. And so he let us film there. And so we had a real convention to film at, and without that, we'd never be able to recreate that. And yeah, that's the Once and Future Smash. Yeah.
and the fact that we're using sort of documentary or mockumentary as a genre to sort of tell the film as well, was that kind of a fun way to kind of play it out?
Oh yeah, it was really fun. So we have the real backdrop of an actual convention. And so we have the 2 leads, and then I also got a lot of my friends, like Victor Miller, who wrote the original Friday the 13th, Dan Yeager from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm not naming everybody because I'll forget people, but to get them involved, and you could tell they really had a good time, and they're talking about how influential this End Zone 2 was to their film. It's just it's a really good time. Plus, I think fans of the horror genre, they're going to see people that they know up there talking about, this movie, and it's just a really enjoyable experience. Yeah.
And what is it about horror, do you think, that has created such so icons, really, that are still stalwartly followed and supported today?
Yeah, because that's an interesting question. Because I grew up watching Siskel and Ebert, and I'll still watch some of them now. And if you go back and watch them, movies that were up for Oscars and stuff, you might, like from 1980 or something, and you see that now, and you're like, I don't even remember this movie, or I barely remember it. But a lot of horror movies from the same era that didn't do nearly as well, people love those, and they love all the characters in them. And I don't know what it is, but there's a connection to them. And when you're around fellow horror fans, you feel that connection. And when you watch a horror movie together, it's like a communal experience. You're sharing the same love for things.
And even just putting it into a convention, a Comic-Con convention,
right,
which has really kind of had a...
There's no rom-com convention where everyone's getting together and talking about, their favorite romantic comedies. And if there is, maybe there's one. There's not several all over the world. Yeah.
It creates a fantastic backdrop, doesn't it, as well? Because it's an unnatural environment anyway.
Yeah, and like I said, and with all the different icons, if you're a horror fan, you're going to know all these people. You're going to know a Dan Yeager. You're going to know John Dugan from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.